Whilst battery-powered presence sensors are becoming increasingly popular, there are still many situations where a powered presence sensor is a better option, and for some, it's still their preferred method of powering their devices. What we're looking at today is the new Shelly Presence Gen4, which is available to buy now. It's a well-designed compact millimeter wave presence sensor with a real-time light sensor and features a host of great features, including the ability to switch between communication protocols. In this video, I'll explore what this sensor has to offer, look at where it performs well and where it falls short, and ultimately see how well it works in practice. Hey everyone, my name's Simon and welcome to Byte of Geek, a channel that's all about home assistant and smart home technology. So a big thank you to Shelly for sending me out their new Presence Gen 4 to test and review on the channel. As always, they've had no editorial input into this video and you'll get my honest thoughts and opinions about it. This then is the new Shelly Presence Gen 4, and as you can see, this is a Matter and Zigbee multi-protocol device, which we'll talk more about in just a moment. This is a mains powered sensor and it can track up to 6 people in up to 10 custom zones, and it covers quite a large area as well. So if you have a big open plan area in your house, then this could potentially work well as a single presence sensor. Inside the box we have some mounting screws, a USB cable, a fixing pad, instruction leaflet and the sensor itself with the Matter pairing code printed on the side of the sensor. The design of the Presence Gen 4 is quite interesting, very different from others I've seen of late, and I actually quite like what Shelly's done here. The body of the sensor is plastic and the built-in stand seems to be aluminium, and this has a non-slip pad on the base. And on the front of the sensor you have the light sensor, and under that is an LED indicator that lights up when someone's being detected. The stand can be manipulated according to your needs, although it can't be rotated horizontally. You can also completely dismantle it, which makes for some really interesting installation options, including wall mounting it with the included mounting screws. The USB port is recessed on the back of the sensor, and if you're using it with the stand, then it just roots out through the back, allowing it to sit perfectly flat on a surface. There's also a small button to enable you to switch this into Zigbee mode, and we'll talk more about that in just a bit. The Shelly Presence Gen 4 is a 60 GHz sensor, so it has a high level of sensitivity and it'll detect even the smallest amount of movement in a room. It's capable of detecting up to 6 people at a time with a range of up to 3 meters for still detection and an overall coverage of up to 42 meters squared. This is a relatively small sensor, measuring approximately 6 centimeters by 4 centimeters without the stand. It has radar and light sensors, and it'll operate in temperatures of -20 degrees Celsius up to 40 degrees Celsius. Connectivity wise, it supports Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5 LE, Matter and Zigbee, and it works with numerous smart home ecosystems, including Home Assistant, Google Home, SmartThings and Amazon Alexa. Setting the Presence Gen 4 up was a super easy thing to do, especially if you've already got the Shelly app installed, as once you give the sensor some power, then it's almost immediately detected in the Shelly app, and then you're asked if you want to add it. From there, you can then configure things like the device name, the room that it's in, and the icon, before then moving on to the main settings for configuring the sensor and defining zones. Now, if you haven't used the Shelly app before, then it gives you lots of things to configure for your specific device. For this sensor, we've got the room designer, and I'm just going to skip past that for a moment, but elsewhere we've got schedules that you can set up, actions, which are like automations, and you can set up local device or URL actions. You can configure your primary and secondary Wi-Fi access, which is really useful for adding a fallback on your network. Whether it's connected to Shelly Cloud for remote access or if you want to keep it 100% local, Matter configuration and MQTT settings for if you wanted to communicate to your MQTT server. There really is quite a lot here, including device sharing and even configuring how the sensor looks on your Shelly dashboard. Now, as I mentioned, the Shelly Presence Gen4 is a 60 GHz millimeter wave radar sensor, and this allows it to detect very subtle movements such as breathing within its field of view. In the Shelly app, you have lots of configuration and fine-tuning options available for the sensor. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen so many options available on any sensor I've previously tested, and this really helps you to dial things in just as you need them. In the radar configuration, you've got the ability to define the minimum and maximum detection height, as well as how high the sensor's located relative to the floor. So this makes it perfect for trying to avoid things like pets. This works particularly well if your pet remains at floor level, and for the most part it does a good job with our cat, but if he jumps onto a higher surface, then obviously it will pick him up. If you're taking advantage of that flexible mounting that I mentioned earlier in the video, then you can specify that the mounting has been flipped, and you've also got the usual settings such as sensitivity levels and transmission power, which helps with false triggers. In the fine-tuning section then, well, you can really go to town with the configuration of the sensor, with plenty of options to adjust object detection and motion activity. Again, these all help with things like false positives and ghosting that sensors of this type have had issues with in the past. Now, this might be a bit more than some people want in terms of setup, and that's okay because I found the defaults worked really well, so you don't have to start changing any of this to get it working. But I certainly welcome the flexibility Shelly have provided here in allowing me to be able to adjust these as I need to. The Presence Gen4 also has a real-time light sensor on board, and in the Shelly app you can configure the threshold for darkness and brightness as a percentage. Now in the app and Home Assistant, this then translates to being a status of bright, twilight or dusk. Oddly, unless you put it into Zigbee mode, then you don't get to see a lux value, which I would have preferred, as you can fine-tune automations in Home Assistant based on that value. One of the best things about this sensor is the mapping out of your room and the creation of zones within it. The Presence Gen4 supports up to 10 different zones, which gives you a huge amount of flexibility in what you can create, and it enables you to be super creative with your automations. In the app, you first need to define the boundaries of the room the sensor is located, and then define the individual zones inside that. Additionally, you can also define objects within the room if you'd rather do that, although I found the list of objects to be a little limiting in some areas, so I just went with painting out the zones instead. The zone designer is a little fiddly to use at first, but you soon get used to how it all works. However, one annoying item I noticed was that via the Shelly app, you could only define 4 zones, and there was no option that I could find to allow me to change that. However, because Shelly devices also have a web interface, I was able to go in via that route and create the additional zones required, with them all then showing up in the app. Now, setting up the Presence Gen4 in Home Assistant was super easy, with it being automatically detected via the Shelly integration. And what you get exposed in the sensors is quite impressive. So each of your defined zones are all listed with their proper names and whether there's anyone in that area. You also get an overall room occupancy and a people count, along with the appropriate value for the illuminance level. In configuration, we have firmware details and a restart option, and in diagnostic we have some disabled sensors for cloud connectivity, signal strength and uptime, and obviously these can all be enabled if required. One of the nice features of this sensor is its ability to be able to be switched to work from a Matter device to a Zigbee device, and just inside the back of the sensor body is a small button that you can press a few times and then it swaps over to Zigbee. According to the instructions on the leaflet included with the sensor, you press the button 5 times and then it goes into Zigbee pairing mode. I tried this at least 4 or 5 times, including trying it via the Shelly web interface, and I couldn't get it to switch over at all. I was just about to completely give up when I noticed on the Shelly website under the product specification that the process was slightly different, and I tried that and sure enough it suddenly worked, and I was able then to be able to add it into Zigbee to MQTT. However, once connected, the experience is quite disappointing. As you can see, you have the 10 different zones listed, even though I didn't have 10 set up. And frustratingly, the state is not updated as you move into each zone. I only got the correct state if I press the little refresh button. I'm not entirely sure where the problem lies here, and I've reached out to Shelly about this. However, I have noticed that other reviewers have mentioned similar problems with Zigbee mode and Zigbee to MQTT. I haven't tried it with ZHA, so it might work just fine there, but equally, I don't have issues with other Zigbee devices updating their state in Zigbee to MQTT. I've been using the Shelly Presence Gen4 in my kitchen dining area to automate the lights instead of the PIR I had installed previously. Whilst that PIR was great for detecting someone in the room, if you went out of sight or sat still for a while, then it just didn't know you were there, which usually led to the lights all being switched off. Now, my kitchen diner is a bit of an odd shape, so there is part of it that the Shelly Presence Gen4 can't reach or see, but I've mapped out the area that it can and defined some zones such as the dining table, breakfast bar and kitchen area. As you can see in this footage, I'm actually by one of the kitchen worktops and I'm just over 4.5 meters away from the sensor, and you can see by the little LED on it that the sensor has picked me up and it continues to do so whilst I'm just stood still. As I move around the room, you'll see that I get picked up in those different zones. So if I'm at the dining table, then the lights will come on above it. And when I move over to the kitchen area, then I have the under cabinet lights come on as well. I did get some ghosting from time to time, which is pretty common with these types of sensors, and with the default settings the second person does disappear after a few seconds, but obviously with all the fine tuning I mentioned earlier, you can really hone this in to stop that from happening. So what do I think of the Shelly Presence Gen4 then? Well, I actually have slightly mixed feelings about it. As a sensor, it's very impressive. The design and flexibility are fantastic, and the level of configuration is the best I've seen of any recent sensor that I've reviewed. It's very quick to detect presence, and the ability to create so many custom zones will enable you to do some incredible things in your smart home with just a single sensor. If you're after a wired presence sensor, then this is worth every penny of its asking price. However, it's not without its issues, and I'm certain that these are all software and firmware based. I've raised all of them with Shelly, and I'll update the description of this video when I get a response. If you're using a Home Assistant, and if you're happy to do so, then my suggestion would be to set this up as default and use it with the Shelly integration for now, as that works really well. Or maybe try it with ZHA and see if that works better than Zigbee to MQTT. All these niggles aside though, I've managed to get this working and configured exactly how I want it in a relatively short amount of time. And this is now my new sensor for my kitchen dining area, and it's working great. If you want to pick up the Shelly Presence Gen4, then it's available now for £56, and I'll leave an affiliate link in the description below. Alternatively, you can just scan the QR code showing on the screen here if you prefer to do that. If you found this video helpful, then I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and why not subscribe to the channel for more smart home content like this. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.